Hello and welcome to our webinar, Defining Success, How to Have Productive Employees from Day One. My name is Alicia Ibrahim. I'm a trainer within our training and development division in Insight Global. I've been with the company for 9 years and have a passion for building and delivering learning journeys for all of our internal employees. And today I'll be joined by my colleague, Colton.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Colton. I'm a hiring partner here within our digital services channel division. And what my role is I support and service customers across the United States, whether they come to us with any needs on talent solutions or retaining talent. So I'm really excited to share with you my experience over the past 6 years that I've been here and how we've seen successful productivity from our clients.
Yes, and part of what we're going to focus on today for our conversation is why productivity impacts retention, boosting productivity to boost your business growth, and viewing this in the lens of 30, 60, and 90 days, and how could this help you? Colton is going to start us off with some statistics to really paint a picture for this conversation.
Yeah, so day one and why it's important. So some things that we've found through some surveys is that 44% of new hires regret their decision after the first week. And 65% of employees know that if the job is the right fit within the first month. So commonly what we see is when we're, looking at the candidate market, people that are looking for a new role and they have, a month or two into their last position, we ask why. And most of the time it's due to lack of organization, preparation, or that they didn't really feel that they got into the swing of things into the company and role. So that's something that we see across the board. I'm seeing with candidates consistently.
Additionally, it can take employees on average around 6 to 7 months to feel settled in a new role. What we also see is 80% of contractors and full time employees say a better onboarding experience would make them stay longer in a role. So, in the nature of what Colton and I do, we see a lot of great results from the lens of how we set up our consultants, but also how we set up our internal long term employees. So, part of what we will lean into is building out a really strong and robust training and development program for all of our new employees. So, whether you are joining as a new director in IT or a new recruiter, you get a full 2 to 3 days of learning how our company was built, our culture, how the business operates, and you get face-to-face time with points of contacts that you're really going to lean into in the first 90 days. And what we see from this is that people will feel more settled, more comfortable, they're confident in their decision to join the company, and they feel excited to drive their productivity within that first 30, 60, and 90 days.
Consultant engagement. So on this slide, you'll see what we call the consultant journey, and this is something that Insight Global has implemented over the past 5 to 10 years with our active consultants. And I'm consistently pushing for my clients, whether it's a direct hire or a contract hire, to really implement this journey. So to highlight what this looks like, it all starts as soon as they accept that offer. We're excited, we want to get them started, but there's a lot that goes into it to make sure that process is impactful. So the pre-boarding meeting is something that we conduct where we meet with the client and we discuss everything logistical that you can think of before they start their new day, whether that's the background check, the onboarding process, is there credentialing that's needed? Do they need to have a badge for their first day? Where should they park? What does the attire look like for the office? Anything that we can talk about before they start their first day to make sure that they're feeling prepared before they start. On that first day, we conduct an orientation meeting. So that is with typically myself, a client, and the candidate. We all jump on a meeting together and we discuss what is their first day and what is their first week going to look like. Who are they going to be training with? Have they met that person? Do they need a tour of the facility? Do they know where the lunch space is? Do they need to bring their lunch for the rest of the week? We discuss everything and align expectations for that first day and week. That way, that first impression can be made on both ends. From there, we're engaging with both the client and candidate, kind of getting pulse checks and making sure that things are off to a good start. So typically we check in after the first week and so on every other week until we really get into performance reviews. So after their first week, every 6 weeks, we have a meeting with both first the client, then the candidate, to establish what the performances looked like. So after those expectations and agendas were set, is that candidate actually performing in their role? So that's where we get more specific on different metrics or KPIs or performance that they've done well or that they need to improve upon. And then we also get the candidates' feedback. That way, if there's any gaps in tools or resources or training that they feel like they need, we can then share that with the client as well. So it really mitigates any gaps in communication between the two. And then moving towards more that end date meeting, if it's a contract hire, we start to evaluate, if that contract is ending, what needs to be done before that end date happens. Does the project, need to be to a certain stage before they can end the contract? Or if they're converting full time, what do they still need to prove to then give that client confidence that they can convert full time. And that's really at that like 6 to 9 month mark is typically where they should be settled into their role. So for full time employees at this point, they should be fully productive into the swing of things. So that's something that, again, this is our journey and what we've created and seen success with over the past 6 years. And I try to really implement that with my clients as well.
Yes, and from that onboarding journey to the way we take care of that talent, it really allows us to see some great results and longer retention and higher productivity. So now that we've talked about the importance of starting productivity early on and the success we've seen doing this, we're going to talk about some key themes and how you can really drive this in your new hires' first initial 90 days. The way that we're going to set up this conversation is we're going to cover commonly asked questions that we will get, but organize this in 5 buckets of onboarding. So we'll start with organization, communication, setting expectations and an agenda, providing resources, and how to really drive culture and purpose for your people. Colton is going to cover our first question under organization.
Yeah, so I'm constantly getting this question from my clients. Is there a difference in how to boost productivity for full-time employees versus consultants? And the answer to this is kind of a yes and no answer. Yes, it is different, but no, it really shouldn't be different. Consultants come to us all of the time explaining that, they don't feel like a full-time employee at the organization. Maybe they were brought on to put out a specific fire for a client, or it's a specific project that's already under the swing of things and they need to jump right in. Whereas full-time employees, they're more of an investment on both sides. That company is investing in that candidate long-term and are treated differently from that. So it's really important just from the beginning to make sure that each employee is set up for success. And all of our clients know what their benchmarks are and what their expectations are at certain timelines of the project, but that's not always shared. So it's really important to operate with full transparency and set those expectations from day one.
Something else that we will see is setting up systems and technologies prior to day one really makes our new hires feel more successful and comfortable and more effective in their role if we get it right the first time. So it's less ramp up time to make sure there's no errors with the access that they may have to a platform or technology. It's a more seamless transition. And we also find that it can be very frustrating to join a company and not have the access or knowledge or really the resources that they need regarding technology, whether it's with their laptops or it's with actual software. We also find even if there is issues within that first week, if we resolve it as quickly as possible within a few days, that still will impact that retention and productivity for our new hires. So thinking about making sure ahead of time with your service desk teams, your IT teams, or whoever it may be, that technologies are set up ahead of time seamlessly as well.
Yeah, it's really about preparation, and that's how you get organized as a company to make sure that it works well. So, some statistics to share that is 51% of new hires are frustrated with their technology, whether that's their computer doesn't work, maybe they don't have the right logins on day one, or even their desk isn't set up. That's obviously not a good start in a new role and a new opportunity, and those first impressions do matter. 44% of new hires are frustrated with having no clear manager during onboarding. Again, as I mentioned, sometimes people are brought on quickly. When we get reached out to, it's usually an immediate need, but they don't always get the training or know who they should lean on with questions to be supported. And 45% of full-time employees who've left within the first 90 days cite leaving due to disorganized training.
So, some things to think about: being prepared and being organized. The next question we're going to cover is under our communication bucket. And the question that we'll cover is, what are the best methods for creating effective feedback loops with your employees? And what it really boils down to is being honest and transparent in your expectations for their role, especially in each phase. What's the goal for the 30 days, the 60 days, the 90 days? If they don't know what their goals are, what they're supposed to be working on, what training they're supposed to complete, and where they should be at each stage, how are they supposed to be successful and productive that aligns with your expectations? So, a really great way to get ahead of this is to schedule performance check ins and reviews ahead of time, even if it's leading up to one on one, separate check ins, but you're having a clear agenda and a clear structure of how you're going to assess if they're being productive enough, if you communicated clearly enough to them. Do they know how it's going to work? Do they know what they need to be working on? And starting that from the first day, leading up until week 4, week 6, and having a cadence for check ins is really important. And not only having that structure, but allowing that new employee to have the opportunity to share their feedback, to create safety and vulnerability in your conversations where they can feel confident in giving you feedback on any gaps in the training or onboarding process. If they need to share with you, they need a little bit more training or it's not clicking quite yet, making sure you're understanding where they're coming from, in addition for you having the opportunity to share what they're doing well, but also where they can improve. So it just creates more alignment and definitions of success. And in your one-on-one meetings or your check-ins or whatever format you're going to be using, definitely start with asking how they're doing, how they're liking everything, are they acclimating to the culture? But again, also using specific questions to identify any gaps in the team dynamic, with their technology, with their productivity too. And then ending again on that open and honest communication is very key to understanding both sides so you can create a plan on the go forward and how they're clearly going to align and how you're going to really drive your feedback loops.
And one of my favorite shared values that we have here at Insight Global is always know where you stand. And what that means is really making sure that whoever you're working with has an understanding of are they doing well right now or what do they need to improve upon. And sometimes feedback can be viewed as scary or negative, but all of our consultants and even full-time employees that come to us consistently asking, I don't really know how I'm doing. I think I'm doing well, but I don't really know. And as much as I'd love to, I can't sit on site with every single client and consultant that I hire. So I don't get to see that and witness that and be able to share that. So that's one thing that I really push for, my clients and managers to really be making sure that they're letting our consultants know how they're doing. And it comes from a culture of care. If you're not sharing that feedback, it really just shows to that candidate, I don't really know if they care about me. So that's something that's very important as far as transparency and letting them know so they can improve.
And some numbers to keep in mind to help you be more effective in how you're communicating in the onboarding process. 65% of new hires are frustrated with having no clear points of contact for questions during onboarding. So something that we like to do within the first week is, if they're meeting with point of contacts face to face, they're getting a presentation from service desk or benefits or our philanthropy team, we're making sure we're following up with the list of those point of contacts. So in 2 weeks or in 60 days, they need to reach out to those folks. You can make sure that they have the right place to go and how to really partner with those clear point of contacts. 34% of people who have left within the first 90 days mention misalignment with coworkers, whether it's with the direct leader or team members too. So this goes back to our conversation where having clear feedback loops and clear alignment of goals and who and how to partner to drive their goals within that 30, 60, 90 days is very important. Lastly, 86% of full-time employees, compared to 80% of our independent contractors, feel they can reach out to leadership when facing a barrier at work. So creating that safety, that vulnerability, and that platform to share feedback and gaps is important in order to drive a successful onboarding process.
So setting expectations. How can I measure success of my new hire if there are no KPIs or metrics of success? So in my role, I'm in the digital office. We have clients coming to us with a variety of different positions and skill sets, and maybe it's not as defined to track if they're performing well. Whether that's in the healthcare industry or customer service, or even a role that's maybe a servicing role to some of their clients. It can be hard to determine what does success look like. But in these instances, it's more about the quality that they receive rather than the tangible metric itself. It's important to give that feedback, but really more importantly, establishing that from the beginning. One of the examples that I've had, that I was working on a customer service position, and the employee that we had hired, had a different background of customer service where they needed to be a little bit more strict with their customers that they were working with. Versus this company was really looking for somebody that was a little bit more compassionate and sensitive into these conversations. So because it wasn't established from the beginning, there was kind of a gap in performance, but because we had those effective feedback loops, they were able to improve from there. And kind of thinking about it in the 30, 60, 90-day range, within the first 30 days, new hires should be fully immersed into the culture, the shared values of the company, and kind of understand just the business foundation. At the 60-day mark, the new hire should understand what are the business priorities, how do they align with them, and really discovering, how can they best work with their employees and really get to know some of the upper management leaders. At the 90-day mark, new hires should be impacting those priorities. They should be fully effective into their role, and depending on the position, that can vary. Typically, between that 3 to 9 month mark is where they should reach full productivity.
And thinking about driving that productivity even further, the next question that we're going to cover is, what do I do if my new hire isn't meeting the expectation of productivity? They're not aligning with what you outlined in those goals. Maybe it's a mismatch in the job expectations, but this is where you really need to lean into those feedback loops and those check-ins and getting to the root cause of why there's not as much productivity as you're wanting to see within that 90 days. This could be a reason that they don't have the right resources or the right training, and making sure that you're having those available resources accessible to them is really important, especially if a new hire is joining a new company and they're not sure how to navigate those resources, or they're not familiar with your management tools or platforms. It may be completely new to them. So having the support to navigate that can be very helpful. Something that we will do in the orientation week is share our intranet or our main hub for resources, not only giving a tutorial of it, but we actually get creative and have our new hires do a scavenger hunt to find the top 4 to 10 things that will be really important for them to navigate and use within that first 90 days. So if you're having your folks come in and making sure that they are having the right resources, making sure they understand how to use it, there's a demonstration and the purpose behind it, and getting familiar with tools that they may not be familiar with using, and how to really lean into that access and the points of contacts for that. What we really find here is just knowing that there is a resource available to them, or being open to creating a resource, can be very helpful. It helps them feel confident. It helps them feel like they don't have to ask as many questions while still being open to receiving those questions. But something that we will find that's frustrating is that 58% of new hires, with the lack of access to essential tools, will be frustrated during that onboarding process. 97% of new hires say it's important for onboarding to include those tools and softwares that the company uses to streamline the process within that first week. And then 84% of independent contractors mentioned they lacked the access to at least one or more of the tools that they needed to be successful in their current role. So something to think about: if you don't have a repository or a way to help support the navigation to those resources, what can you do to incorporate that into your onboarding process?
So how can you create culture and purpose? Another question that I get a lot is, how do I strike the right balance between helping my employees become self-sufficient, but making sure that they still collaborate with team members? So again, this goes back to fostering an environment of teamwork and partnership, and setting the culture expectations prior to that day one. What can we do to make them as successful as possible from the beginning? And first impressions matter. When we conduct those pre-boarding and orientation meetings, and I'm talking with a client, I kind of establish, hey, this might be a silly question, but I want to make sure that they're fully prepared. So things that we discuss, can they listen to music or podcasts while they're working? Is your team environment very communicative and social, or is everybody pretty heads down during the workday? And then also too, company events. Do you guys participate in those? Is it going to be looked at as a bad thing if they don't go to one of those things? And another example too, of course, we're in a virtual environment. What about their camera being on during meetings? And I do have an example of, one thing that we established again with an employee who came from a different company and background where it wasn't normal to go and talk to their manager. It wasn't, if their door was open or closed, it was not normal. They would need to be setting up a meeting to discuss whatever questions they had. But in talking with this manager, he's very open. It was very established that if the door's closed, he might be on a client meeting. Maybe I shouldn't approach, versus if it's open door, come in and talk to me. I want you to be updating me throughout the day. So those are some things that can help foster the culture and purpose and collaboration between team members. And with that, 20% of the new hires said that their company didn't do anything to facilitate networking or interpersonal support between new hires and their coworkers. And 96% of new hires want their onboarding to include introduction to the company's mission and values. And about 98% of employees report a strong workplace culture helps them feel connected to their workplace and team.
And to tie a bow on all of this, what can you achieve by implementing some of these tips that we've talked about here today? And why is it important, and why should you spend time on it? Our advice to you would be to do a quick assessment of your current onboarding process and how you bring your employees on. But what this can help you do is it saves time and money, specifically on recruiting, and you can get your people up to speed faster and more productive, seeing higher results for your companies. Also, you don't have to continue to replace and have that turnover cycle that you may be experiencing. The more that you're leaning into creating a very, very strong culture and a very strong training and onboarding process, the more likely your people are going to stay and be more productive. This also can help drive your internal and external brand of your company, depending on the nature of what you are going to be doing, and really making sure that you're having that talent being taken care of and making sure they're helping drive results for your company, as well as investing in their development as well.
The number one thing that our clients come to us needing help with, aside from not being able to find talent, is they talk about how much time and money and investment it takes to interview, onboard, train an employee, and that they need help in retaining that talent because it takes time away from their managers and leaders. So some things that maybe you might not think about, but if you sit back and kind of reflect, it makes sense how costly it can be. Losing a new hire to early turnover can cost between 50% to 200% of the new hire's annual salary, and about 100 hours of lost time between current employees. And around 80% of both independent contractors and full-time employees say they would have stayed longer in a role if they had a better onboarding experience. And companies that invest in employee development saw a 58% increase in employee retention and a 24% increase in productivity. So hopefully those statistics kind of, show you and help you reflect on, what should I be doing now to improve this process? Why is this important? And with that, I want to thank you all for watching. Hopefully you guys had some key takeaways and things that you can now implement into your onboarding process. And if you would like if you have any additional questions on any of these topics, or would even, be interested in a staffing partnership, my link is attached to this presentation. Will be sent out. I would love to set up a time to connect with you all and help align with our partnership from a staffing perspective.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you, everybody.